Welcome, everyone. My name is Stacy Epperson, and I'm your moderator for today's discussion on how innovative approaches in housing can dramatically reduce the impact on our environment. We're proud to join others across the globe as part of CNN's Call to Earth Day, which is an initiative dedicated to promoting environmentalism and sustainability. I'm the founder of Next Step. It's a nonprofit social enterprise that's dedicated to advancing sustainable homeownership that's affordable. And we do this by leveraging the efficiency of factory-built housing to provide a higher quality, energy-efficient home at a price point that most people can afford. Today, I'm leading this discussion with an esteemed panel of housing and energy experts who care deeply about how the United States delivers affordable housing in a better and greener way. Our speakers are all remarkable individuals who are striving to protect our planet, and I'm happy to introduce them today. First with us, we have Margaret Van Vleet, who's the founder of Trillium Advisors. She's a longtime public sector affordable housing leader who's been deeply involved in wildfire recovery on the West Coast. She has served under 2 Oregon governors as the director of the State Housing Finance Agency. She was introduced to disaster recovery in Sonoma County, California. She and her housing authority team responded to the wildfires that destroyed over 5,000 homes. Now she's back home living in Oregon, and she's going to tell us more today about wildfire recovery, both in California and her home state, Oregon. Also joining us today is Rob Olson at Ikea. Rob has built a successful and rewarding career as an innovative and values-led leader for the world's most beloved home furnishing brand. As Chief Operating Officer of Ikea US, he oversees the overall business direction for all the retail locations, in addition to business development and expansion. Leading by example, he inspires Ikea coworkers to live out the Ikea vision to create a better everyday life for the many people. Rob started with Ikea in 1998 and has held several management positions, including the real estate manager for Inca Group based in Malmö, Sweden, where he played a pivotal role to improve sustainability. Also joining us today is Ari Matuziak, the CEO of Rewiring America. And he's also the co-founder of Purpose Venture Group, a social impact advisory firm and incubator that builds community-centered ventures to address climate and economic inequality. He has almost a decade of executive leadership in renewable energy and household electrification, which he's going to share more about that today. Ari served in the Obama White House as the special assistant to the president and director of private sector engagement. Also joining us today is Clemente Mojica, and he's the president and CEO for Neighborhood Partnership Housing Services, NPHS, a community development financial institution located in Rancho Cucamonga, California. Clemente guides the organization's work in affordable housing, neighborhood revitalization, community wealth building, job creation and preservation, and environmental sustainability. And lastly, we have Tom Heineman. He's the principal of MH Advisors, where he helps clients on housing finance with a focus on manufactured housing. Projects include developing modernized criteria on the aesthetics, build quality, and energy efficiency of higher-end manufactured homes to support an affordable mortgage product. And he's partnering with housing developers on a number of single-family developments that he'll be sharing more about today. He has a long career in public service. He worked in the Obama administration. He worked at the U.S. Department of Housing, Urban Development, and the U.S. Treasury. So let's get straight to it. Climate change is dramatically altering weather patterns and contributing to severe weather events and natural disasters. Our housing stock is ill-equipped to withstand these extreme conditions. The financial housing market and ultimately the taxpayer will carry the cost to rebuild. So we're going to start our discussion today with Margaret. And she's been working on the front lines of disaster recovery, both in Oregon and California. So Margaret, with your professional and long history in affordable housing, we'd like to hear what has been your professional experiences with climate change, both professional and maybe personal too. And you might even share about some of those experiences that may have shocked you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Stacy. It's great to be here with this panel, and I really appreciate you convening this really important conversation. So today I'm advising the state of Oregon on ways that the state agencies can speed up the delivery of new affordable housing after we lost 4,200 homes a year ago to wildfires. 4 years ago, I was the affordable housing director in Sonoma County, California, after wildfire destroyed about 5,300 homes there. So I have been right in the middle of recovery and rebuilding efforts as these devastating wildfires are literally changing landscapes and communities in the West. And you asked what was shocking, and honestly, I could share a lot of stories about the experiences. The suddenness with which towns are taken out, the fact that sometimes the fire completely misses one house, so it's still standing amidst the scarred Black landscape, the way the smoke lingers in the air for weeks, and the trauma and grief of friends, neighbors, colleagues who've lost everything in the blink of an eye. For me, it's also important to really zero in on how these wildfires are different from other natural disasters like floods and hurricanes. Whole houses go down to the foundation and underground utilities. There is nothing left to repair or salvage. Cars and appliances melt along with cans of paint and cleaners and other normal household but toxic household substances. So that means debris cleanup involves scraping several inches of soil. And it has to happen fast before the rains fall and push all that toxicity further into the groundwater. And so, I could say a lot more about all of this, but one of the key points here is wildfires are fundamentally different. And our insurance system and FEMA assistance really are not set up for that kind of response.
Thank you, Margaret, for sharing that. A lot of natural disasters and severe weather events, it seems like the story seems to end when the news camera rolls away, right? Maybe people begin to forget about it. So can you tell us a little bit more about that and what that was like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So just understand that these wildfires last for weeks sometimes. And so it's not that we're all bracing for an event and then it comes and then the next day it's over. It's a rolling event and we're watching as evacuation orders come and go. And so, we're watching the temperature, winds, humidity, and the air quality to gauge when we can begin to respond and potentially move home. So absolutely, when the news crews go away, it's about the time when the adrenaline that's gotten everybody through those first stages starts to wane. And I think in that moment, really the enormity of the challenge sets in. Certainly for families who lost everything, their ability to cope, move in with family, rent a hotel or an Airbnb or whatever, depends on their income and their wealth. For low income folks, of course, they have a lot fewer options. And so in those weeks after the fires, as public officials, we begin to say, okay, where did everybody go? Some people are at Red Cross shelters, but certainly not everybody. So right out of the gate, there's this question about how are we going to track people, right? We don't stand with a clipboard at the border of the town and say, where are you going? Check in with us. So it's this chaotic sense of where are people. The other thing is this recognition that in Sonoma County and in Oregon, we lost more homes in the space of, call it, a week than we permitted over the last several years. Like the enormity of what was lost and how fast we need to get about the business of rebuilding begins to settle in for the industry and for government. And in Sonoma County, some of us, myself included, were still displaced and couch surfing when we had to get back to work and start planning. So.
Thank you for that. The effects of climate change are here, real. And I think the most profound thing for me is what you lost in a week was more than what had been built over the course of, years, right? So the rebuild's huge. We're going to be talking about building today and how, where, and what we build matters, right? So let's talk to some of our affordable housing developers and how they're innovating and addressing climate change. So Clemente, I'm going to switch to you, and your team employ a unique nonprofit social enterprise model in San Bernardino, and I know in other places in Southern California. So I want you to talk to us a little bit about how your model works and how you work with prospective home buyers. Just kind of take us through that.
Sure. Thank you, Stacy, and want to thank the Next Step team for convening this panel. So very excited to be here. At MPHS, we're always looking at ways to strengthen and ensure sustainable homeownership. We're always exploring strategies to help homeowners generate more discretionary income to help ensure long-term sustainable homeownership, especially for lower wealth buyers. So it's about building economic resiliency among low-income communities and homeowners. One way to do this is to lower energy costs and build that cushion of discretionary income. So in 2014, as we look to intensify the greening of our homes and making them more energy efficient to reduce energy costs while also addressing climate change, of course, we knew that the next step for us was to blend a solar strategy into our green building. We were already doing the small stuff, drought-tolerant landscaping, replacing older windows with double pane windows on existing homes that we were acquiring and selling back to low-income families. We were putting tankless water heaters on new construction and housing rehabilitation work as well. And so our next step was solar. However, the cost of integrating solar into our affordable homeownership developments was cost prohibitive. The cost of without getting too technical, a 4 kilowatt to 5 kilowatt system back then ranged anywhere between $25,000 and $30,000 in around 2014. This was not pricing low-income families could afford. And it was too costly for us to integrate solar panels into our developments and making these projects pencil. So we had to take a deep dive to understand the industry, especially its supply chain, its value chain. It was very tedious. It was quite the journey, and we're still learning. But, we started talking to manufacturers, distributors, and installers, and we saw that there was an opportunity to consolidate certain segments of the supply chain by acting as a solar broker of sorts, working directly with the solar manufacturers. By doing so, we shaved off anywhere between $7,000 to $10,000 off a price of a panel system. This took out retail pricing and dealer fees that are sometimes associated with the supply chain and this distribution and selling of solar panel systems. So this made it a lot more feasible. They're still expensive, but as we've seen, solar has gone down very drastically. But it made our projects a little bit more feasible. And since we built this capacity, we decided to social enterprise Sojourners as Sojourner Solar, named after Sojourner Truth. Sojourner Solar is a solar platform aimed at bringing the benefits of solar to communities of color. And that's how we started playing a role in the solar equity space and addressing the climate change stuff. Now, how we work with prospective buyers, at MPHS, we offer a suite of fully integrated homeownership services. We do education and counseling, down payment assistance, first mortgage lending, realty. We provide a series of post-purchase education and resources like home repair loans. Now, because of Sojourner Solar, we're doing some solar financing as well. So our solar program became part of our post-purchase programs and services as a way of just to not only ensure long-term sustainable homeownership, but also the preservation of that wealth as well, because the more economically resilient homeowners you create, the more economically resilient, and in the long term, they're better at achieving sustainable homeownership. Homeowners call at NPHS, they get connected with one of our solar project coordinators, and we start the process. They fill out an application, we collect their energy bill information, and we work directly with our solar company partners to design a system. By the way, just to let you know that the cost of that same 5 kilowatt system in California now ranges anywhere from $12,000 to $16,000, with the market average being around $14,000. So we've seen a drastic reduction in solar panel system, which is great. I always like to say that Sojourner Solar came in to disrupt pricing, and gosh darn it, we did it. But it was just the policy environment. There were a lot of things that worked well to lower those costs.
So Clemente, I think you're an amazing social entrepreneur. So to launch that solar company to serve communities of color and get that work done is pretty special. You've also been innovating with factory-built homes. So would you talk to us a little bit about kind of what drove you to this solution, and how you're doing this on vacant lots and to do neighborhood revitalization?
Sure. Thank you for that question, Stacy. So we're a small developer, we're small but mighty, and most of our single family projects are infill developments, meaning that they are scattered sites, anywhere from 1 to 5 units. And as such, it's hard to achieve economies of scale that lead to cost efficiencies. And that makes scattered site development very difficult when you don't have economies of scale. So in order to make it more feasible, we had to look at alternative forms of construction. On-site construction, the way homes are traditionally built for infill scatter site in California, became very cost prohibitive. Almost, we just couldn't make anything pencil. And a lot of the homes that we built come with some local subsidy dollars, partnering with local government. And we couldn't form those partnerships, and we couldn't bring those subsidies for the on-site construction developments, because the subsidies were just too large. So we had to look at other ways of building homes, and that's what led us to factory-built housing. And we are now doing factory-built housing. We are seeing anywhere from a 20% to 25% savings in development costs compared to on-site construction. And of course, factory-built homes are built using environmentally friendly techniques, and homeowners like this. So that's how we got into manufactured housing, factory-built homes, both modular and traditional manufactured. It is a way we had to do it in order to achieve scale and reduce the cost of development to build in these smaller, awkward, tough to build on lots to revitalize the communities that we're working in.
Okay, well, thank you, Clemente. So it's a joy working with you and your team, not only leading in factory-built housing in California to get a greener solution, but also, leading on solar. And so California, of course, is one of the U.S. leaders on solar, but most markets are behind in making this shift. So how do we leapfrog change in our sector? So I'm really looking forward to hearing from Ari, who's been thinking about national policy and approaches to the building sector toward energy efficiency. So Ari, would you please share a little bit about your mission at Rewiring America and help us better understand the concept of electrification, particularly as it relates to housing?
Well, of course, Stacy, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for putting together this panel. It's wonderful to be with everyone. So Rewiring America's mission is to electrify everything in the economy that can be electrified. And the reason for that is pretty simple. It's the only way that we can hit any of our climate targets. It turns out that about 90% of our emissions in the United States come from energy. And energy, as just a matter of course, is the only way to make that clean is to electrify it and have sources of renewable and clean electricity that end up being the supply for all of us. A lot of times in climate, the discussion really revolves around the supply side. What do we need to do to clean up the grid? But there are certain laws of thermodynamics that make true that supply and demand have to equal one another. And on the other end of the grid are all the machines that use the energy. And it turns out that 42% of our energy-related emissions in the United States comes from decisions we make around the kitchen table across 121 million households. What kind of cars we drive, how we heat the air and water in our homes, how we cook our food, how we dry our clothes. That's it, 42%. And if you then include the places that we go to work or where our kids go to school, it ends up being closer to 70% of our emissions come from those places. In our households, there are 1 billion machines that need to be replaced or installed over the next 20 years in order for us to get to that zero emissions future. And what that really means is leveraging technology that already exists. And it is an opportunity for us to have this win-win-win. The upshot is that we can't hit our climate targets unless we electrify all the things and all the households in the United States. But the other upshot is that when we do that, American families are going to save money on their energy bills. They're going to have cleaner air in their homes, and we're going to have more jobs in our communities installing those systems, because you cannot offshore or automate the installation of a water heater. And so really, the opportunity is pretty incredible. It connects the climate conversation to every kitchen table in the United States. And it is also the most equity-centered approach to addressing the climate crisis, because the water heater, the planet doesn't care what kind of family owns the water heater. It cares about the emissions that are coming from it. And we don't solve the problem unless we electrify all the things. And so that's really the upshot of what we're working on. And the good news is that these technologies are here today. What we really need is to make sure that we educate folks about their availability and create the policy environment to make sure that they're affordable for people. The last thing I'll say is that on this topic is that or on your question, Stacy, is that we did a bunch of analysis that shows that 103 million households out of that 121 million would save money on their energy bills today if the heat pump water heater or the heat pump air furnace was the same price as the machines that they were replacing. So if we can lower the front end cost and make it easier to have those machines installed, then families will save money on their bills. And that's really what we're advocating for now at the national level and with folks like you all.
Thank you. I think you really brought it home in a way that we can understand it at the kitchen table. So good job on that. And, let me ask you, where do you see immediate opportunities for collaboration with allies or advocates? Where do you start this work? I mean, if you're going to change everybody's household, where do you start?
Well, it starts with folks like you all. It starts with really, it's a community level conversation in a lot of respects, because, I have yet to meet somebody who says, I can't wait until that next model of the water heater comes out because I'm totally upgrading. These are not things that people think about. They only address the need when those machines stop functioning, when you wake up in the morning and your house is cold, or your shower is cold, or you can't cook food for your kids. And so we can't expect that families are going to be the technology experts about these appliances. So what ends up needing to happen is that the market needs to shift so that the options that they are presented with are the clean electric alternatives that make the benefits available to all families. And so there is a national level conversation in terms of policy that we need to have. We need our lawmakers and policymakers to be investing in our households, frankly, as the keystone of our climate infrastructure. We need to think about our homes as climate infrastructure and make the investments accordingly. But then we also can be partnering together to make it so that the contractors that do this work are trained on the benefits of these technologies, that we have enough electricians to support the work that's happening in these communities, and that folks who are developing new housing, like a number of you, or rebuilding housing in communities that have been lost, are thinking about it from the beginning as an opportunity to electrify all the things. And so, you know, the other aspect of this is that it's not like there's sort of an overwhelming nature to, oh, it's 1 billion machines, it's 121 million households, but it's also one furnace at a time, one water heater at a time. We don't need anybody to hurry up and rip something out of their basement when it's working just fine. We just need to set the conditions so that when the time comes to replace that thing, that the clean electric alternative is the obvious choice for the family to take.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So, you know, you've really helped Next Step understand why electrification is so important for housing development going forward. And we see you as an ally in our partnership with Housing Developer Equity Plus. And so Tom Heineman here is going to talk to us a little bit about a new approach to housing development. And Tom, if you would share the project that we're planning in Hagerstown, Maryland, and the approaches we've decided to take for sustainable housing.
Right. So first and foremost, we looked at a city that was near the Washington and Baltimore metro areas. We also looked for land that was in the city boundaries. And then we also looked to make sure that there was a need for housing for moderate income workers. And Hagerstown and Maryland fit that bill due to the job growth in the warehouse and distribution centers. We found land that was like open farmland within the city's boundaries. And then we also realized that through the use of factory-built housing, we could narrowly focus the price points to where most of the job growth was in that sector. And then we overlaid that sort of concept with, you know, if you think of traditional affordable housing, whether it be rental or for sale housing or site built, it usually falls into two categories. One, garden style apartment building in a low rise, or a townhouse. What we decided to do was a little something different, leveraging manufactured homes. We took the 60 some odd acres, and then we applied cluster zoning to that. So we made the lot smaller relative to what the zoning regulations would allow. And then we offset that difference between the minimum lot size and so we're at 5,000 square feet. So we took the difference between the minimum lot size, which was 7,500 feet, and then per lot set aside a lot of open space. So we clustered the homes tightly together and then developed nature trails, community space, and whatnot. And the notion behind that really is to create sort of a subdivision feel that gives people who move there sort of the same feel that they would find in an exurban residential development with homes costing $200,000-300,000 more. You know, the open space, the amenities, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the foundation of the vision, to deliver something for to deliver a community for working families that had many of the same amenities that they would find for prices, you know, $200,000-300,000 more per home, and do it in a location that is both close to schools, close to employment centers, and close to the city's transportation infrastructure, the bus lines, et cetera, and the major transportation arteries. So we're close to employment, we're close to transportation, but we have a subdivision feel to it. Then we overlay on that the efforts that we're working with Next Step on and Ari and Ikea, which is to sort of increase levels of efficiency. So all the homes will be electric. We will look for sustainable appliances, and the idea really is the value proposition that we'll be able to offer, sort of affordability for folks at the median income. So we think of, you know, mid-level teachers, 5 years experience, warehouse workers, you know, police officers at 5 years expertise. And so we know that we can make those homes affordable to them, and we overlay that with a level of energy savings and efficiency to really drive the value proposition and have the homes and the community be sustainable.
Thank you, Tom. That's a great overview. If I can get you to mute your mic, please. And we're going to talk a little bit more about sustainability. And what I'd like to do is get Rob to talk to us a little bit about where IKEA leads on sustainability and social entrepreneurship. You know, Tom touched on that this project that we're working on in Hagerstown, Maryland, really brings together the work that Ari's been doing, that Equity Plus, the developers and Next Step, and hopefully IKEA. So go ahead, Rob, and talk a little bit more about that.
Definitely. Thanks, Stacy, for having us here today as well. And thanks to the whole Next Step team for convening this panel. It's quite an honor to be part of it, so thank you. I think if you start, two different topics you highlighted. First, maybe start with sustainability. We see climate change actually as our responsibility, and we feel our vision to create a better everyday life for the many people compels us to act. And we look at net zero as setting the frame for future business growth. And when you keep that in mind, a few things we've done is going to how we've produced our product and offered product to the customer, focusing on 100% LED lighting to really help that energy efficiency, where we've seen reductions for the consumer by 36%. Also focusing on renewable energy in the production of our products, energy efficiency improvements in the transport of product. But also, if you look at our own operations, where we have 50% renewable energy across our operations around the globe starting last year, 100% renewable energy in our operations by 2025, EV chargers in all of our stores for our customers to be able to use when they come and stop by. We're also in the process, Ari was talking a little bit about electrifying and with heating and cooling, air source and ground source heat pumps. We're in the process of converting all of our stores to renewable heating and cooling solutions. We're also implementing energy efficiency solutions like LED, power optimization, artificial intelligence for the heating and cooling systems, and many other areas, as well as operating 2 wind farms here in the US, 2 solar farms, and converting most of our, over 95% of our locations to solar panels on the roof and some on the parking lots as well. When you talk about the other area you highlighted, social entrepreneurship, we started with the IKEA social entrepreneurship arm that works on this globally and partners with Ashoka to support a program called Della, which in Swedish means to share or sharing. And in this, we support many programs annually. I had the great opportunity to work with you over the last year, starting to see how we could help really combine our 2 visions, bringing a better life for the many people with housing opportunities, which is a serious topic across the US, how to support affordable housing. And it was a great pleasure working with you guys to see how we could enhance that and make a more energy efficient home for the consumer as we move forward as well.
Thank you, Rob. You know, some countries have come to favor building homes and factories as the preferred sustainable approach for producing, you know, higher quality, energy efficient homes. And, you know, these technologies can give us a superior building methodology. It helps us reduce cost and waste. And more consumers seem to be open to this building approach. So, we've had the opportunity to work with you, and I know I've shared, my sister lives in Sweden and she lives in a factory built home. So I was hoping you could maybe tell us about maybe Ikea's experience in other countries with factory building.
Yeah, definitely. I think in the US, we haven't necessarily started working with constructing housing to create affordable housing solutions yet. But as you highlighted globally, we have partnered with Skanska, a construction company, working on affordable housing in Europe in a joint venture called Volkswagen, where we have really tried to help create more affordable, energy efficient homes for the many people across Europe. We have locally partnered with a place called Home, which is a nonprofit aimed at providing transitional housing for the homeless. And then, as already highlighted, we've worked together with you in your mission to put sustainable home ownership within reach of everyone while transforming the manufactured housing industry to see what we could do in the DELA program and really help try to bring functional, energy efficient solutions to the many across the US. There's a new DELA program just rolling out this year as well with Ashoka and Ikea Social Entrepreneurship, where we're working with affordable housing in Mexico as well. So we continue to try to reach more across the globe as we move forward.
Thank you, Rob. It's inspiring to see the company supporting affordable housing and these missions around energy efficiency and sustainability. I think it's always inspiring and fun to talk about building new housing. But I want us to pause a minute and think about Margaret's story, facing the devastation of climate change. Thousands of homeowners who lost their home in a single day of wildfires, many of which were older mobile homes, I think she would tell us, which represent the most inefficient homes on the grid in the United States. There are millions of homeowners who pay exorbitant energy bills because the system has failed them. The regulations are not there. The codes were not there to address their needs. I've personally seen families pay more than half of their income for the utility bill alone. So we need to ask ourselves, how do we fix some of these problems facing these underserved communities, often in rural and persistent poverty regions? So Margaret, I want to circle back to you. Oregon has been a leader in helping families replace old homes, old mobile homes, to get them in more energy efficient housing. Can you tell us more about what's happening in Oregon with the replacement efforts? And we'd also like to know, how did the wildfires impact these efforts? And hopefully we'll get to hear about the heroes on the ground who are making the difference.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stacy. And, Oregon has really been a leader thanks to some local champions, some good cross-sector collaboration, and some leadership advice from you along the way, Stacy. So back in 2019, before our Oregon wildfires, the Legislative Assembly appropriated just about $2.5 million in new money, specifically for the replacement of older, inefficient homes in poor condition. In essence, that program was set up so that the state could provide a grant up to about $50,000 to pay for the proper decommissioning of the old home, plus a 10-year forgivable loan of up to about $35,000 to assist homeowners to pay for the new home. There was a Community Development Financial Institution, or CDFI, known as Craft 3, that developed a companion private chattel loan program for these replacements. And Energy Trust of Oregon, an energy efficiency organization that's funded by our big utilities, provides another grant. So it was this layering of financing, and the idea was to make it as easy and accessible as possible to homeowners. So the fact that we had the coalition certainly has given us a leg up to thinking about how the system finances MH and why high quality, energy efficient mobile manufactured home is so important. But without question, our wildfires last year slowed down the implementation of this program, even while it really underscored the urgency of climate mitigation and brought to focus the impact that this older housing stock has on climate. The good news is this year, the legislature did give more money for home replacements, and the overall vulnerability of MH as part of our housing stock is now much more visible, more understood by policymakers. And I'm hopeful, a lot of us are hopeful that that leads to stronger policy and investments going forward in manufactured housing.
Thank you for that update, Margaret. So I appreciate the work that's going on there. And I know you're going to be quite busy replacing 5,300 homes in Oregon. Okay, so I just wanted us to think a minute about sometimes how we feel overwhelmed by, devastation of wildfires or just the climate change data, right? When RA started talking about what we have to do to make it, kind of turns my stomach a little bit, especially when I see the lack of political will for the policies we need now. We need a sea change. It takes government, corporations, investors, nonprofits, and citizens to commit. And I know it's hard because sometimes you feel like you're giving up something, maybe a little more upfront money to save long-term, or you have to change your behavior. Ari, one of the key things that Rewiring America has highlighted is the need to drive consumer, choice. What do you see as the effective strategies influencing consumer choice toward these electric options or these energy efficient options? I think about Tesla, right? Elon Musk got us to think, we've got to have that, right? What happens for housing? How do we make that happen?
Yeah, well, I think your framing of this as it's easy to get overwhelmed is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about this work and this approach, because if you take a step back and you think about the planetary scale of it all, it's a lot for any one person to try to figure out how they're going to have an impact. But if you think about it at a machine level, it's just one machine at a time. Now, it ends up being a lot of machines, but it's one machine at a time, and it gives us all, as long as the policies are set up the right way, it gives us all agency about investing in our personal infrastructure, which has a lot more impact really than anything else that we can possibly do on climate. And I would just call out something that Clemente said about his really important work in San Bernardino area, which is that over the course of their efforts on solar, the cost of solar has come way down. And that is just a phenomenon. It's true with EVs. It's not because every automaker is at the climate vanguard that they are all announcing the end of their internal combustion engine programs. It's because the cost of EVs are going to be cheaper than the cost of internal combustion engine cars, which makes sense, by the way, because they have many fewer parts. They are actually like much simpler automobiles. But the underlying components, the batteries and the motors, were what needed to come down in price. And that happens through scale. The same is going to be true of heat pumps, water heaters, and sort of space heaters. It's going to be true of induction cooktops. It's going to be true of heat pump electric dryers. It's true of everything as long as we get to scale. And so one part of this is just making it so that these things are the same price or cheaper than their fossil fuel equivalents, because people do pay attention to how much things cost, and they understand that if something is going to cost them less to operate and is the same price off the showroom floor, as it were, as a fossil fuel thing, they will likely get the appliance that saves them money. And oh, by the way, is better for the planet. I have really sort of also never met anybody who's ideological about a furnace. They just want the thing that is going to work and is going to be good for their family, reliable, and save them money. And so part of this is just making the stuff competitive on a price point. But it's also true that homes need to be ready to be electrified, because you're not going to say yes to a heat pump electric water heater if the plumber tells you, great news, I have one, but first I need to upgrade your breaker box, And that's going to take 3 weeks. And then we can get you the water heater, and then you can have a hot shower. So we need to get these homes ready to be electrified so that when the time comes, it's not a complicated decision for someone to make because your house has been set up. And so the consumer behavior that we need to leverage is actually just the process of electrifying things in people's homes. And you mentioned the Tesla and the car, and that's a great place to start because a lot of folks are going to be buying EVs. They're going to be buying new EVs. They're going to be buying used EVs. They're going to be getting electric cars. And when you get an electric car and you want to charge it at your house, you may have to update your breaker box in the house to to plug in your car. And the great news about that is that when you update all those systems, pretty soon your car is also going to be a battery for your house. And so if we can take on these moments and say, how do we take one electrification decision that a household makes and set up the next 3 to come, then that's going to be doing the work for us as we bring prices down and as we get more scale. And so I really think it is that there's a lot of complexity in the sense of like making all of that happen, but actually the work in front of us is pretty straightforward and pragmatic. It's not like we need to invent nuclear fusion to solve this problem. We just need to make sure that there are enough wires in your house with outlets that can take on a heat pump space heater when your furnace breaks. And that should be, frankly, pretty liberating in terms of how we think about solving these challenges.
Yeah, I think it is liberating. So thank you for that. And as we begin to think about wrapping up this wonderful conversation we've had today, I'm going to ask each of you a single question. And so I'm going to ask you about what brings you hope. Okay. And so Clemente, if we can start with you, reflecting on this conversation and what's bringing you hope.
Well, that I'm not alone in this, right? That's we have Next Step. We have all these wonderful folks that are moving the needle on environmental sustainability, long-term sustainable home ownership. I was hearing Ari speak. I started thinking maybe I need more ideological whether I should get an electric tankless water heater on our homes and let the solar pay for it, or stick with natural gas. And I'm thinking, oh man, so this brings
Got to go electric, Clemente.
That's right. So I'm ready. I'm telling them, like, I send a text right now to my folks, say, hey, we got to probably look more at electric here. But this what brings me hope. A lot of folks are moving the needle on this stuff. It's about sustainable home ownership, climate change, the fires. We're not alone, and we can't tackle all this together. So that's what brings me hope.
No, thank you for that. And Ari got us, we changed a project to electric with Tom just by understanding, right? And so getting that message out is really important. So Margaret, what brings you hope?
Well, this conversation brings me hope, but I would say more generally, there is that silver lining in these disasters, and you've heard a little bit of my story about that. But there are lots of stories out there, and I do think there's this will, this drive, this urgency that is shared. That really has not been there in the housing sector for the many decades that I've been in this work. And so I am really heartened that maybe the time for change, really important change, is finally right here. And we've got the innovators doing it from all angles. So I am hopeful, even though sometimes it's really hard. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for that. So Tom Heineman, what brings you hope?
I would say I've got a sense of optimism, right? There's a lot that is sort of a downer, watching the wildfires, watching the floods and everything that's happening. But when we look at the work that we're trying to do in Hagerstown, is to try and prove what can be done in an affordable way. Mm-hmm. And I think we're in a fortunate position now because we're literally at the ground level to say, we don't have any preconceptions on what we can and can't do. We just can see if it works. If it works, we'll do it. And if we can prove that it saves consumers money in the long run, it works. Because we have this, I feel like, because where we're pricing our homes, we're at such a lower price point relative to everything else in the expensive housing market, that we have some leverage to lean into this space, right? We can lean in on the heat induction appliances, we can lean in on electrification, we can lean in on solar. But then it becomes a proven point for consumers or moderate income consumers that be like, wow, this actually works. My bill, if I bought this home for, X amount of dollars, I'm saving money on utilities. If I compare it to the home that I would have bought, that's, now 50 years old, it's much less efficient. So this is a better deal. So being able to prove proof of concept at an affordable price point, that's what gives me hope. And the opportunity that working with you and Ari and Rob, and it's the opportunity that we can actually make this work and it becomes a provable point. And so much of what we've seen in sort of the modular side and the solar side just seemed so, on a price point basis, so far from the target demographic that we're working on. But utilizing the tools that we have, I think we can really innovate. And so that gives me hope. And then, being able to replicate this in other markets, and lower in communities of color in Virginia, in university towns and other mid-sized cities, that gives me optimism, because we can quickly move to a proof of concept that can help shape the way we develop and provide home ownership to really a group of folks that are kind of shut out of the market. And now as they enter in the market as first-time home buyers, their first experience really is going to be something that's sustainable, energy efficient, and attractive.
Well, that's
So
what we
that's hopeful. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's wonderful. That's the point of it every day. So let me just jump in and ask Rob, what gives you?
Yeah, no, I think what brings me hope is that discussions like this, we see the topic is on the table and more people are taking it seriously. You look at the countries and the corporations that are at COP26 taking these type of topics to a deeper level. You see the panel discussion today. Not only the discussions, you also see it leading to actions. I mean, we mentioned Tesla, but now you see so many more auto manufacturers coming out with electric vehicles. See so many retailers working with photovoltaic solutions on their buildings and moving forward. You see our neighbors switching out to LED bulbs, to water saving taps, to blackout blinds, et cetera, et cetera. So you see the discussions being had and the actions following. So we're moving the right direction, but it's we got to pick up pace a little bit.
Okay, thank you. And Ari, what brings you hope?
I got invited to be with all of you. And the way it happened, which is that we got to have a conversation about a really important project that you all are building to create affordable housing for working families in Maryland, and that you were able to see a path to make it work for those families and for you by building that development as an all-electric development. And
Okay.
And that just proves that the math works. And the math is going to just get better year over year over year, because these machines are going to get less expensive. The technology is going to get even better. The tools and the incentives are going to become even more abundant. And so we can do this. It's really just a question of knowledge and know-how and will. And those are things that actually are self-reinforcing, right? The more you have of any of those, the more you can get, because it starts to feel like you're doing a thing that's successful, and people like to feel like they're being successful. And I'll close by sharing a story, which is that we had a high school student reach out to us the other week, having looked at some of our materials and having, I guess, drank the electric Kool-Aid, and wrote to us to say that he had decided that what needed to happen was he needed to be a part of electrifying all the schools in the United States, or putting solar, excuse me, on the rooftops of all the schools in the United States. And he had done the math about how much energy that would generate. And, that was inspiring on its own, because he was taking time out, quite literally, actually, from applying to college. And so we had to schedule a call with him around his testing schedules and, college application essay writing schedule and all the rest of that, which sounded stressful. But he was totally committed to making this happen. And what occurred to us was, what a cool thing, because we can talk to him about electrifying schools and get him sort of knowledgeable and feeling empowered about things like heat pumps. And if he goes and takes that on in his school, the other thing he is going to do, certainly, is talk to his parents about their furnace and their water heater and their stovetop and the decisions that they're making around their own kitchen table. And that's really what we're talking about in the end. And so, so thank you. And it's really an honor to be a part of this.
Well, thank you. Wonderful story. The youth always give us hope, right? The next generation. Okay. So what gives me hope? All of you, thank you very much for today. Next Steps committed. I know you're committed. We're getting ready to take our factory built homes to a zero energy home level within the next 5 years. And yes, Ari, they'll be all electric. So we're figuring that out. We're going to need each of you, but that's the future. We look forward to the partnerships we have with all our developers, all our policy people, and with Ikea too, Rob. So thanks again, everyone. Thank you for working on climate change by providing sustainable, affordable home ownership. Have a great day.